Before we dive in, smash that subscribe button, hit like, and comment below if you think survival should have been possible, because what happened next on Austria's highest peak will haunt you. The icy wind howled across the Großglockner, Austria's tallest mountain, carrying a bitter warning to anyone daring enough to climb in winter. Snow swirled like ghostly ribbons around the jagged summit, and the darkness was absolute, except for two small pinpricks of light, headlamps cutting through the storm, inching upward, step by treacherous step. Kirsten G. was 33, exhausted, her breath shallow and uneven. The snow under her boots shifted unpredictably, threatening to collapse beneath her weight. Her boyfriend, 36-year-old mountaineer Marcus L., moved with practiced precision, each step deliberate, confident. He had planned this climb. He knew the mountain. He knew the risks. And yet, something in the way he glanced back at her unsettled her. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The climb was supposed to be a challenge, a thrill, a shared conquest. But now, it was a nightmare. Kirsten's hands were numb, her fingers barely able to grip the ice axe. Her legs shook uncontrollably. Marcus, sensing her faltering, spoke softly. "We're almost there, just a little further." But his voice, calm and measured, carried a weight she couldn't place, a weight that didn't belong to someone who truly intended to help. Behind them, the webcam perched on the mountain lodge captured the ascent in chilling clarity. It recorded two headlamps climbing steadily. Hours later, it would show only one descending, the other vanishing into the storm as if it had never existed. Kirsten stumbled again, falling against a ridge of ice. Marcus steadied her, his hands firm. "You need to move," he said, urgency creeping in. But the snow was merciless, the wind slicing at her face, and her body screamed for mercy it would not receive. Every second stretched into minutes, every breath a battle against hypothermia. By the time they reached roughly 50 meters from the summit, it was clear Kirsten could go no further. Her body refused to respond. She collapsed against the icy rock, the storm claiming her energy faster than she could fight. Marcus looked down at her, the cold reflection of the snow masking any emotion in his face. Then, inexplicably, he did something that would shock the mountaineering world. He turned and started down the slope alone. The webcam captured the moment with horrifying precision. Kirsten's light disappeared into the darkness, leaving the screen hauntingly empty except for Marcus's descending figure. At that moment, the mountain became a silent witness to what prosecutors would later call an unimaginable act of neglect. Back in the valley, authorities began to piece together what had happened. Emergency calls, witness statements from other climbers, and the footage from that cold, lifeless camera started forming a picture of a night gone wrong. But even the investigators were unprepared for the evidence waiting at the summit. Something they had not anticipated. A clue so damning it could change everything. And that item would change everything. The chill of the Großglockner had not just frozen Kirsten's body, it had frozen the truth in place, waiting for investigators to uncover it. When the Alpine rescue team arrived at the desolate ridge, they were met with silence and snow thick enough to swallow footsteps. The wind had erased almost everything, but the one item left behind refused to be ignored. A split board, Kirsten's only piece of gear, abandoned carelessly in the snow. At first, it seemed innocuous, a piece of sporting equipment, but forensic experts quickly realized its significance. The splitboard had been positioned in a way that suggested it had been used as a last-ditch attempt to shelter her body from the wind. Whoever placed it there knew the mountain, knew the dangers, and yet it hadn't been enough to save her. Marcus L. had returned to the valley by himself hours earlier, claiming he had gone to fetch help. But as investigators examined his story, discrepancies began to pile up like the snowdrifts on the ridge. GPS data from his phone and smartwatch showed precise movement patterns. No detours, no search for Kirsten. Every step he took led downward, straight to safety. His account of rescuing her started to unravel. Meanwhile, The webcam footage circulated quietly among authorities. Analysts enhanced the images frame by frame. The haunting sight of two lights ascending and one descending alone told a story that words could barely capture. But when investigators cross-referenced timestamps with weather data and witness reports from other climbers, a horrifying realization emerged. Marcus had spent nearly an hour above the ridge with Kirsten, an hour, and temperatures plunging to minus 20 degrees Celsius.
Back at Innsbruck, prosecutors began to build their case. Every detail mattered. Friends of Kirsten recalled her excitement before the climb, her trust in Marcus's experience. Interviews revealed that she had been a novice climber, relying entirely on him for guidance. Emails and texts confirmed that he had meticulously planned the expedition, checking weather reports and mapping the route. His knowledge gave him power. His knowledge also gave him responsibility, and it appeared he had failed to uphold it. But just as the investigation seemed to point clearly toward negligence, a new, darker layer emerged. A witness, another mountaineer, reported seeing Marcus with Kirsten earlier in the climb, speaking sharply, almost aggressively. The tone, the body language, all suggested tension. Could this have been more than a tragic miscalculation? Could there have been anger, impatience, a cold disregard for her survival? Then came the discovery that would shock even seasoned investigators. In the snow, partially buried, lay a waterproof journal belonging to Marcus. Inside were meticulous notes about the climb, but one entry stood out, dated the morning of the ascent. It contained a single, cryptic sentence. "If she can't make it, she won't survive." The investigators stared at it in disbelief. Was this a premonition, or something far more sinister? As prosecutors and detectives pored over the evidence, it became clear that this was no ordinary accident. Every trail of footprints, every timestamp, every abandoned piece of gear painted a picture of betrayal in the harshest environment on the continent. And the mountain itself, towering and indifferent, had preserved the truth in its frozen silence. The world waited, breathless, as the case moved toward charges. But just as it seemed the story was reaching its peak, a new, darker layer surfaced. Someone else had been on the mountain that night. Someone who might have seen more than anyone expected. Before the trial even began, the alpine community was abuzz. Everyone knew the footage. Everyone had seen the images of Kirsten's light fading into the storm while Marcus descended alone. But investigators now had a new variable. An anonymous witness who claimed to have seen the pair higher up on the ridge just hours before disaster struck. This witness, another climber sheltering in a small snow cave, had been documenting the ascent on a handheld camera. What emerged from their footage was chilling. Marcus and Kirsten arguing fiercely, voices barely audible over the wind. At one point, Marcus's gestures were aggressive, almost commanding. The witness later said, "He didn't seem worried about the snow or the mountain. He seemed frustrated with her, angry even." The prosecution pieced together a timeline. Kirsten, exhausted and hypothermic, had reached the point of no return. Marcus, armed with knowledge, strength, and planning, had choices, and he chose to leave her. The mountain's unforgiving cold did the rest. Yet the witness's footage introduced a new layer of complexity. There was a window, a moment, when rescue could have been possible. And that choice not made, prosecutors argued, was the line between tragic accident and criminal negligence. When Marcus was finally brought to court, the tension in the room was palpable. His demeanor, calm, almost detached, contrasted sharply with the grief-stricken families in the gallery. The jury listened to the webcam evidence, the GPS trails, the split board, the journal, and now the witness footage. Every detail, every freeze frame pointed toward a chilling conclusion. Marcus had abandoned Kirsten, leaving her to die in conditions any human could not survive. But just as the case seemed airtight, the defense revealed its bombshell. Another climber, a distant acquaintance of Marcus, testified that Kirsten had, earlier in the climb, insisted on pushing for the summit despite exhaustion. According to the testimony, Marcus had repeatedly warned her, tried to get her to turn back, and even offered shelter, which she refused. The courtroom collectively held its breath. Could this tragedy have been unavoidable? A collision of inexperience and nature's fury? The jury deliberated for hours, each detail scrutinized, each timeline replayed in their minds. Outside, the alpine winds howled as if echoing the verdict. And then came the sentencing. Marcus was found guilty of grossly negligent manslaughter. The mountain claimed Kirsten, but the law claimed accountability. Yet even as the case closed, the haunting images from the webcam continued to circulate online, replayed by those who couldn't comprehend how a human could leave another to die in such circumstances. The split board, the journal, the last light disappearing into the darkness, these were the permanent imprints of a tragedy that would never be forgotten. Months later, climbers returning to Grossglockner reported an eerie feeling near the ridge where Kirsten had fallen. Some swore they saw a faint light, flickering like a headlamp in the distance, always just out of reach. Others whispered that the mountain itself was keeping watch, a silent testament to betrayal, hubris, and the thin line between survival and death. If this story was intense, hit subscribe, because the truth of human nature is far darker than any storm, and the mountains, they never lie.